You have a healthy meal, you have a salad with lots of greens in it, and you drink one of these soft drinks. A lot of the magnesium in the greens are just going to get flushed out.
Welcome to the Brain Fit Podcast, where we share the cutting-edge science on how you can improve your memory and live a happier, healthier life. Dr. Feldman, thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
My pleasure.
So I learned about you on the world famous Andrew Huberman podcast. You did a great interview there, and I know you've done some other very, very distinguished podcasts. It's such an honor to have you here on the show, and it's so great to have a chance to talk with you.
Well, it's enlightened self-interest. I think some of the things I have to say may positively impact the health of your listeners, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to express that to them.
And so off camera, you were telling me a really interesting story about a recent podcast you did with some famous musicians, RÜFÜS DU SOL, who recently sold out the Rose Bowl, a huge concert venue, and they shared how breathwork was so impactful on their lives. You are an expert in all things breathing. You're one of the leading scientists in the world on the brain and breathing and breathwork. So could you share that story with us?
Sure. I had a phone call out of the blue from the manager of the band RÜFÜS DU SOL, which quite frankly at the time was not in my playlist, and saying that the band discovered breathwork and they would be interested in doing a podcast with me. And I said, sure. I did a little bit of homework, and it turns out that my generation was not particularly connected to their music, but when I spoke to my sons and people a generation too younger than me, they were their favorite band. And as I delved into their music, I began to like it more and more. In any case, we did a podcast. I did a podcast with the lead singer of the group, Tyrone Lundquist, and I was not quite what I expected. I had expected to see someone who was my image of a rock singer like Axl Rose, long hair, somewhat torn clothing, and much to my surprise, a extremely clean-cut and quite frankly, very handsome man showed up. He was energetic, he was thoughtful, he was articulate, and we had a great discussion. It turns out that the band essentially discovered breathwork through Tyrone Lundquist's father, who was doing it. And the band then started doing breathwork and had a profound effect on them. I think it's best encapsulated in a single statement that he made during the podcast. He said, the band went from whiskey shots to ginger shots.
Amen.
And it improved almost every aspect of everything they were doing, from their performance to their day-to-day lives, their family lives. It was pretty amazing for them. And he knew it was effective for them. Their most recent album is called Inhale, Exhale, to show you how profoundly it affected them. But quite frankly, like a lot of lay individuals, no matter how intelligent they may be, just have not have the background to understand the physiology related to breathing. So we talked a little bit about that, and that was also fun. And he was very receptive to that information. So I would encourage your listeners, rather than sort of go over that, to listen to the podcast. It's on a group of podcasts called Sing for Science, one word, and they could find it rather easily. And hopefully you'll post it on your website.
And if rock stars like breathwork, it can't possibly be wrong, because they got access to all kinds of fun things to do. And so that is really saying a lot. And we're going to get into some of your favorite breathwork practices, breathwork for sleep. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But something I learned was that Dr. Feldman, you are not only a distinguished professor, a great researcher, and you're the chair of neuroscience at the David Geffen School of Medicine, but you're also a great mentor. Your first graduate student is actually changing the world with magnesium, and I know you are doing some consulting work for his company now. I would love for you to share what your understanding is of magnesium, its role in the brain, and the specific type of magnesium that is really doing tremendous things at improving people's memory, including improving cognitive function in people with mild cognitive impairment.
Would be delighted to. So the basic science is that there are four metal ions or four metals that are very, very fundamental in body function. There's sodium. We know a lot about sodium. It's table salt. Potassium. Calcium. We know a lot about calcium. And magnesium. And for sodium, potassium, and calcium, we know a lot. Everyone's heard about it. You know, they're important. Magnesium, less so, although recently in the past couple of years, there's been a growth in the health span, lifespan, social media about the importance of magnesium. My first graduate student, Sung Lu, LRU, was very interested in brain function, and particularly in learning and memory. And he did some very clever experiments that showed by changing the levels of magnesium in the extracellular fluid of the brain improved cognitive function. And he has tried to understand the mechanism. It may relate specifically to the action of magnesium influencing the membrane properties of neurons. It could be due to the stimulation of various growth factors in the brain. But independent of the specifics of the mechanism, it definitely has a positive effect. They published a study in patients who had diagnosable problems with learning and memory called mild cognitive decline. And what they found is that in this placebo-controlled double-blind experiment, that individuals who took the magnesium compound called magnesium threonate had marked improvement in their cognitive function compared to individuals who did not get the magnesium threonate.
So I understand the study. This is a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. Those who took magnesium, these are people with MCI, mild cognitive impairment, which is actually quite severe. This is pretty severe memory loss. And the people who took the magnesium showed significant improvement in their cognitive function compared to the placebo.
This is correct. I mean, a little more detail. You can get a metric that measures your cognitive age or gives some indicators of your cognitive age and compare it to your biological age. The people that they studied with mild cognitive decline, this index called Spearman's G factor, had an age of about 68, where the biological age was about 58. In other words, their cognitive age was as if they were 10 years old. And so that was the metric that they used. After 3 months, the average of the individuals in the drug improved about 8 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Whereas those who took the placebo actually improved 3 years, which is not uncommon in even placebo-controlled trials because people sort of sussed out that it may be affecting their learning and memory and may have gone better on these tests. But the 8-year improvement was unprecedented.
If you or someone you love has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, I want you to know there is hope. Alzheimer's is preventable and it is even reversible. In fact, we are reversing Alzheimer's in my medical clinic here in Florida. My partner and medical director is Dr. Josh Hellman, a medical doctor trained at Harvard who specializes in preventing and reversing Alzheimer's disease, and we are reversing Alzheimer's in our patients. If you'd like to learn more about working with us to both prevent Alzheimer's and even reverse Alzheimer's and reverse memory loss associated with other forms of dementia, we would love to hear from you and send you some free information so you can learn what we are doing and see if it's a fit for you to come down and work with us in our clinic. We also work with other clinics around the country to help patients both prevent Alzheimer's as well as to reverse Alzheimer's and reverse memory loss associated with dementia. So if you'd like to learn more, go to brainpowerclinics.com. Go to brainpowerclinics.com and then enter your information. We will send you some free information, and then we hope to work with you if we can be helpful to you to help you prevent and reverse Alzheimer's disease. Kind of makes your brain younger and improves cognitive function. And magnesium is extremely safe. A lot of prescription drugs out there have severe warnings, including brain bleeds. And some of the Alzheimer's drugs really have severe side effects that are are concerning. And magnesium is used in over 300 enzymatic processes in the body. Most Americans are deficient in magnesium, according to USDA. At least we're not eating enough magnesium-rich foods. So this is a fantastic way of improving brain function, protecting the brain safely.
The two comments. First of all, it's not only that we're not eating enough magnesium-rich foods, but we're taking in something that flushes the magnesium in the food out of the body before it even gets a chance to get in the body. And you know what that is? Soft drinks.
Ooh.
Why is it soft drinks? Because if you look at the label in soft drinks, they contain phosphates. Phosphates bind very strongly to magnesium. So if you have magnesium in your food and you drink a soft drink, and I won't mention any names because I don't want to get sued, but if you take a drink that has lots of phosphates, which are most of the popular soft drinks, what it'll do is it'll chelate the magnesium and it'll just flush it out. So it doesn't even have a chance to get in your body.
So soft drinks actually can lead to a deficiency in magnesium. That's just another reason I talk about the impact of soft drinks hurting the brain by increasing the risk of type 2 diabetes, which is a major risk factor of Alzheimer's disease. And so one question a lot of people are going to have is, does this apply to diet soda? I'm guessing it does. More specifically, does this also apply to soda water? So just carbonated drinks. Is it the carbonation or is it the additives in soda with regular cola drinks, for example?
What I'm confident in saying is the phosphates are a problem. You need to look at the ingredient label on what you're drinking. And if it says phosphates, for example, you have a healthy meal, you have a salad with lots of greens in it, and you drink one of these soft drinks, a lot of the magnesium in the greens are just going to get flushed out.
Oh my gosh! So you drink a soda with your kale salad, and you lose the magnesium.
Right.
Oh my goodness! That's really fantastic information. I didn't know that. That's great.
Okay, and the second thing is, not all magnesium salts are the same. Magnesium, and to get into the brain, has to cross three barriers. One is the gut. As you drink it in, it has to get from the gut to the brain. The gut to the blood, then from the blood into the brain, and there's another barrier there called the blood-brain barrier, and then it has to get into the cells in the brain, the neurons. So there's three different membranes. For whatever reason, magnesium doesn't easily cross those membranes from most of the magnesium salts that you could buy at the pharmacy or over the counter. Magnesium threonate gets across those barriers 3 to 5 times better because the threonate appears to act on the mechanisms that allow magnesium to cross those barriers. And threonate is a vitamin C metabolite. You have lots of it in your body, and the FDA recognizes magnesium threonate under the broad category of GRAS, generally recognized as safe. So the supplements are generally recognized as safe. Now, there's another label, which it does not have yet, and that's generally recognized as therapeutic, which requires very extensive clinical trials, which are ongoing.
Now, you mentioned vitamin C. If an adult takes vitamin C supplements or increases their intake of vitamin C, would that allow their body to make or help their body make more magnesium threonate?
Well, first of all, you have to be taking the magnesium in. Secondly, I can't answer that.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay?
So, but magnesium threonate.
That could be my ignorance. There may be data out there.
So it is a metabolite of vitamin C. So that may be involved. We don't know yet. Okay.
But the point being is, taking a supplement that has threonate in it is not introducing some foreign substance into your body. Your body already has lots of it. Whereas, you look at any pharmaceutical drug, you're typically introducing something your body has never seen, and then there are all sorts of ancillary issues that have to be dealt with. Here, you have lots of threonate already in your body.
I would like to thank our sponsor, Dr. Love's MagnaSleep. This is my new magnesium supplement I designed with Dr. Kareem Zamori. This is the best magnesium supplement out there. in the market. Let me explain why. First of all, it's got the right forms of magnesium. It's got magnesium threonate, which is really good for brain health. It's a smaller form of magnesium that can cross into the brain. Magnesium glycinate, very absorbable, great for overall body health. But it's also got magnesium malate, which is good for the muscles, and magnesium taurate, which is good for your heart. So it's got multiple forms of magnesium that are great for your overall body. And it comes with vitamin D and boron. Vitamin D and boron work with magnesium to really improve bone health. So that makes magnesium more valuable to your bones, all those three together. And it's got shilajit, which increases absorption. So I designed this to be the very best magnesium available to you today, and it is on sale right now. This is great for improving sleep, but also improving mood, reducing stress and anxiety, improving bone health, improving muscle health, improving energy function. So many benefits of magnesium, and you can try it absolutely risk-free. It comes with an unconditional 6-month money-back guarantee. If you don't absolutely love it, I'm happy to refund your money, but I want you to try this because so many people get a great benefit of magnesium, and this is the best magnesium available. So if you want to get this on sale, click the link below or go to robertlove.net to try it risk-free.
So we're going to get to your breathwork practice, which might be one of the most powerful things that we can do to improve our memory for free and improve our brain function for free. But first, we talked off camera. There's a crisis happening in science right now, and this has affected your laboratory directly, and it goes to funding some of your research grants. You're a very well established researcher. Some of your research grants have been taken away recently, and this has directly affected some of your studies. What if you could tell us, for example, one study that has now been put on pause or maybe canceled because of changes in funding?
Well, we're piecing together and we're doing our best to be able to continue at least at a reduced level experiment. So there's 3 experiments that I think are important. One is we may have identified a protocol that can reduce deaths from opiate overdose. And we just got that published. We're hoping to follow up on that. But this could have tremendous public health impact. It involves taking cannabidiol, which is readily available. And if someone who is taking an opiate injection, if they take cannabidiol beforehand, they may, we predict, we've only done these experiments in mice, but we predict it raises the threshold for the stoppage of breathing.
So this is fascinating. My understanding is that heroin overdose, opioid overdose, basically the brain becomes so relaxed that it just stops breathing. Right? That's kind of the mechanism. We stop people in an overdose just stop breathing by taking too much heroin or fentanyl.
Well, I could be more specific because whatever it does to many parts of the brain, the particular part of the brain that's actually generating the rhythm of breathing, which we discovered and named the pre-Butzinger complex, as opioid receptors. In other words, the neurons themselves have special molecules on them that bind to opiates. Now, we can have a long discussion as to why nature would have done that, but let's take it as a fact. So if one takes opioids and injects it, these opioids go into the brain, and one of the places they go is the pre-Butzinger complex. Now, when the opioids bind to the opioid receptor on the neurons in the pre-Butzinger complex, it slows breathing down and can actually stop breathing. So we know that there's a specific site where the opiate overdose seems to be triggered.
And cannabidiol, CBD, right? This is found in cannabis. And you'll see, especially if you're in a state where it's legal. I'm in Florida. It's not quite legal here, but Colorado it's legal. California, where you are, it's quite legal. There are some blends of cannabis that have high levels of CBD, and so your experiments are showing that CBD can it be vaped? Can it be taken orally, or you've done injections that helps protect that area of the brain to help reduce the risk of stopping breathing is what I'm hearing.
So the experiments were done on mice. We're hoping the experiments will be done on human subjects. There is an effort now to try and have sort of an ad hoc experiment in opioid clinics to encourage people who are drug users to try this.
Yeah, imagine
this is
if we
without
could use
institutional proof.
Imagine you could reduce fentanyl deaths by getting people high on cannabis first. That'd be quite the thing, right? Hey, before you try your fentanyl, please smoke a joint first, and then you'll be much safer.
I'm not advocating that, but cannabidiol is what we've studied. So that's one thing. The second thing is um, one of the fundamental facts of life is the rhythm of breathing. We actually start doing this in utero in the the third trimester. We have to generate breathing movements in utero in order for proper development of the neural circuits and the lung. Because remember, we have to start breathing the instant we come out. And we don't have minutes to try and figure it out. We got to do it very quickly. So we have to practice in utero. And then we do it maybe 1 billion times in life. And words like animal, animation, they have a root in Greek, anima, which means to breathe. So certainly in Western culture, the notion of breath and life are very closely tied together. In the post-Renaissance world, the site for breathing, which was not identified, but was believed to exist in a small part of the brain, was called the noe vital, the vital node. That is the node of life. Breathing again. So we associate the rhythm of breathing with life. And one of the things that we've been trying to figure out is, how is that done? How is it done 1 billion times, very reliably? We're doing it when we're awake, we're asleep, we don't have to think about it, and yet we can change it instantly. I change it when I speak to you. I can double my breathing just by going. It's a real challenge to have something which is extremely robust 1 billion times in your lifetime, and yet you can move it very quickly. If you look at your heart rate, the double your heart rate doesn't happen in one beat. It takes numerous beats to double your heart rate. It's slow. Breathing you could do instantly. So this means that nature had to do some very clever things to make this possible. And so I think that's part of the reason it's been very hard to figure out. And I think we hit on what that mechanism may be. And we have these very high-tech experiments ongoing to try and test our ideas. Now, these experiments require some expensive equipment. They require highly skilled experimenters. And we're challenged right now because we don't have the funds to do the experiments at the level we need to do the experiments. I should say that for those of your listeners who's not aware, the federal government has frozen about $500 million worth of research grants at UCLA. Most of them are biomedically related, including a major grant I have, which is $750,000 a year. So needless to say, that was covering a lot of our research costs. It's frozen. So we're using paper clips and bubble gum to try and hold it together. But if it extends beyond another 2 or 3 months, we may not be able to hold on to these experiments. Now, the third series of experiments that we're doing, and this relates to breathing, so I'm maybe jumping ahead a little bit. When I got interested or became aware that there was the possibility of studying how breathing affects emotion. So we've known for thousands of years, based on meditative practice in Asian cultures, that changes in breathing pattern can have a positive effects on emotion and cognition. So it's well known. The question that piqued me is, what are the mechanisms? Why should slowing your breathing down make you feel better? And I felt that, given my expertise on breathing, I might be able to address that. I took a course in learning how to meditate to see whether or not changing my breathing pattern was key in changing my emotional state. Now I realized as an individual, I'm an underpowered, under-controlled experiment, but nonetheless, I did it anyway, because experiments are hard. And you have to feel that you're working on something that has some chance of being successful. And so being convinced yourself doesn't make it right, but motivates you. So I took a course in learning how to meditate, and I became convinced that the breathing component was critical. So we spitballed in the lab how we might be able to do experiments. And we said to ourselves, suppose we can get mice to slow their breathing down in our command. So they normally breathe 4 to 8 times per second. Suppose we slowed that down and we did it every day for a month. Would we get any changes there in there, anything we can measure emotionally? I engaged a postdoc in the lab, Raquel Abreu, who was very interested in this. She failed for 2 years. Now, those who are in the audience who don't understand experimental science, many experiments fail. If you only do experiments that you know are going to work, you're not going to do anything interesting. We have a mantra in the lab: you can't do anything interesting if you're afraid of failing. Well, she failed for 2 years, but she was very clever. And finally, she hit upon a way we could slow the breathing down significantly in awake mice to 30 minutes a day. So we did that, 30 minutes a day for a month. And we compared those to mice where we did everything that was the same, except their breathing didn't slow down. And we turned them over to Michael Fanzelo, a professor in our psychology department, who's the world expert on fear. And he ran tests on these mice of their ability to respond to fearful stimuli. And what he found is that the mice that went through this breathwork training were much, much less fearful than the control mice.
So you taught mice how to slow their breath, and then you expose them to fear-inducing stimuli, and the mice who went through the breathwork training had less fear.
Correct. I would not say we taught them. The method we used slowed their breathing down. So it didn't involve volitional control. It involved our ability to manipulate their breathing pattern while they're awake. And they tolerated it quite well.
If you are having trouble sleeping, I have a great supplement I want you to know about. It's called Roar Lion's Mane. So Lion's Mane has many different benefits for the brain and for the body. Lion's Mane improves memory. Lion's Mane reduces stress, reduces anxiety. It helps slow down aging by lowering inflammation, and it helps with sleep. It helps you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and fall back to sleep. I learned about Lion's Mane about 5 years ago when I was having trouble sleeping. When I took it, after about a week, I noticed that I was sleeping better and I was able to fall back to sleep, and I was having vivid dreams, which is really cool. And now I take Lion's Mane 5 to 6 nights a week. And I do this because it helps me fall back to sleep. So when I wake up, I'm no longer anxious when I wake up, and I'm able to kind of lay still in bed and fall back to sleep. And I get vivid dreams, which I really like, and it improves my REM sleep. So if you'd like to try some of my Roar Lion's Mane risk-free, go to roarlionsmane.com or robertlove.net to learn more.
But just doing that, just having them breathe more slowly, was it the previous day or was it right before how much?
So a good question. We did it 30 minutes a day, 5 days on, 1 day rest for a month.
So their bodies really got used to it. They really got trained doing that. Got it.
It's, sort of like, well, I could talk about human studies. And then we waited 3 days. We waited 3 days to assure it was not an immediate effect of the breath training. It was something persistent. So it's not something we did while we were slowing the breathing down. It was 3 days afterwards to indicate that, or to look for persistent effects. And we found persistent effects. Now, there was a study done, a meta-analysis of breathwork studies in humans. And they looked at, I think, 3,000 studies. This was done by Tanya Bentley and colleagues at the Health and Human Performance website. They threw out most experiments because they were underpowered and undercontrolled. That is, you really couldn't make a rigorous scientific conclusion because there were too few people studied, or they didn't have a good control. There could be placebo effects. So they wound up feeling that there were I think there were like 75 to 80 of the published studies met the criteria for being sufficiently rigorous that one could look at their conclusions. And what they concluded from that is that in these human subjects, 5 minutes a day of breath work for 30 days produced noticeable beneficial effects in body function. So I would say based on that, we know that there are short-term effects. You get a little bit nervous, you take a deep breath or two. we know that relaxes. I mean, there's no doubt that there's short-term effects. So, when you're at the starting line of a race, you're on the first tee of the golf course, you're about to give a lecture, you're a little bit nervous, you take a few deep breaths, it calms it down. There's no doubt about that. But the question we were addressing, and this study addresses, is whether or not that practice over a period of time has long-term effects that persist beyond the actual practice. And the data in humans says yes, and the data in our mice says it's not a placebo effect. And that's important because many experiments that are done in humans, they're able to figure out that they're supposed to feel better. And if they think they're supposed to feel better, they may actually feel better. And I have nothing against placebo effects. If you feel better, that's all that's important. But nonetheless, one wants to know whether or not there's a direct effect of breathing. Now, the fact we see it in mice suggests that this is not just a human phenomenon. It may be something which is common to all mammals, mice to humans. And then the question you ask yourself, why should slowing breathing have a positive effect in mice? What would be the Darwinian benefit of slow breathing? And so maybe I can speculate, and this is pure speculation, but it's part of the fun of doing science, because first you speculate, and then at some point, maybe you do the experiment, or someone else does the experiment. So we need to talk about sighing. We sigh in order to maintain lung health. We have, I think you already mentioned, we have 500 million of these tiny little air sacs in the lung. They're tiny, tiny, tiny. But with 500 million of them, they represent an area for movement of oxygen into the bloodstream that's 70 square meters. That's a third of the size of a tennis court inside your lung.
So people understand, we were talking about this off camera. So we have 500 billion alveoli, if I'm saying that correctly, in our lungs.
Right.
And so that surface area in our lungs is equivalent to, did you say a third of a tennis court? So imagine a third of a tennis court of exposure every time you breathe. That's a tremendous capacity.
In order to fit that much surface area in a lung, that's 2 liters, 2 or 3 quarts. They're tiny, and they have a small probability of collapsing. Now, spontaneously, and when they collapse, they're fluid lined. And if you ever had a balloon that's wet inside, and if you've never done that, do the experiment. Get a balloon, put water inside, squeeze out all the water, but it stays on the inner surface. You squeeze the sides of the balloon together, they stick, because there's a thing called surface tension. Water actually sticks to itself. And if you try to blow that balloon up, you find out you have to provide much more pressure than you would if there was no surface tension. And so just it's the same thing in the lung. When the alveoli are collapsed, a normal breath is not enough to pull it open. What you got to do is take a deep breath. Now, because it's happening all the time, it turns out you take a deep breath or sigh every 5 minutes, 12 times an hour. If you don't do it, the collapse remains, and more lung area of the lungs collapse, and it could have detrimental effect on the ability to move oxygen into your body and can severely compromise your health.
So humans subconsciously sigh once every 5 minutes. That's just what we're doing if we're just sitting and not paying attention to our breathing.
Or sleeping, or doing anything. And what I suggest to people who are skeptical, and it's okay to be skeptical because all scientists are skeptical. Just don't be cynical. Be skeptical. Do the experiment. Lie down in a quiet place, no music, and just pay attention to your breathing. Just breathe normally. And you'll find every couple of minutes, you take a deep breath. You don't initiate it, you can't stop it, and it's about every 5 minutes. And that's your body reinflating those alveoli that collapsed during the previous 5 minutes. So we're doing that normally. Now, this was critical in the development of our lungs, Because if you look at vertebrates that are not mammals, like amphibians and reptiles, they have giant alveoli. They don't tend to collapse. But because the alveoli are giant, the amount of surface area they can get in their lungs is relatively small. So small, in fact, that they have to have small brains because they can't get enough oxygen in. And they're not warm-blooded because they don't have enough oxygen to maintain that level of metabolism. So critical for mammals to evolve and us to have big brains was to have these lungs with these huge surface areas. But part of the price we have to pay for these small alveoli is sighing every couple of minutes. Now, it turns out that sighing calms you.
You say,
Why?
I'm sorry. Oh, sighing calms you.
Calms you. Forgive me, that's my Brooklyn accent. Science calms you. Now, we're trying to figure out why, but let's take that as a fact. So imagine now you're prey. You're some small mammal being chased by a predator, and you're hiding. Now, you're afraid. Your heart is racing. You're breathing fast. That in and of itself, the noise of breathing, whatever the physical disturbance that your breathing movements make, may be noticed by a predator. If we now take a few deep breaths to calm down, you may become less noticeable. If you become less noticeable, that may improve your likelihood of survival, meaning that your progeny may be more likely in that circumstance to use deep breaths to calm themselves down. And you can imagine over millions of years of evolution, the relationship between these deep breaths and calming became integral to our body function. Now, we as humans were able to hack into that because now we can routinely control our breathing pattern. And we discovered thousands of years ago that by doing that, it calms us. Now that we see it in mice, we can't verbally command mice to breathe slowly, but we can get them to do it. But I'm sure that if we did experiments in primates that we could train to breathe slowly, we probably will get noticeable changes in their emotional and cognitive function. So it's common, we believe it's common now across mammals, but we as humans can benefit from it. And what I'd like to say to your listeners, give it a try. If you're not doing it already, it should be pain-free. There should be little or no side effects and no cost. You don't have to buy in don't even have to buy into a belief system. I think many people avoid meditation because they feel, I got to buy into this belief system. No, don't have to do that. You can get an app for free on your phone and just try it. And I would recommend using the protocol that the HHP Foundation found was effective. 5 minutes a day, 3 days. Just see how you feel.
Let's get into this in detail. You mentioned off camera, this is the number one thing that could positively affect people's health, and it's free regarding your work. It is breath work. And if we had one goal today, it would get everyone to try breath work. Just try it. It's free. And we just want you to be healthy and reduce stress and get the benefits of it. So tell us more specifically about breath work and what they can do. You're getting into the protocol, so they can just do this in just 5 minutes a day. Can you walk us through what this would look like?
Yeah, but I'd like to back up a bit. I would not say it's the number one thing we can do. I think there are several things that everyone should consider doing on a regular basis. Exercise, sleep, breath work, and eating a healthy diet. So one thing is not going to have the impact that it can have if you're just doing one of those things. But I think that breath work can strongly contribute to your overall health. And I think in the long term has benefits which can increase your health span and your lifespan. Now, it's very simple. I always use the analogy of exercise. That is, there are lots of forms of breath work, and I'm often asked, well, which one should I try? And the analogy I use or the metaphor I use is exercise. Consider yourself a couch potato. I would not recommend you get up and run a marathon. One, you couldn't do it, and two, it might negatively impact your health. Get up and walk around the block. It's easy. Walk around the block twice and a few times around the block. When you start feeling that you can do that, then you can begin to do a little bit more intense exercise. Maybe run, maybe go to the gym and do some resistance exercise. At the point you're comfortable with exercise in general, then you may want to split off, depending on what you want to optimize. Do you want to optimize endurance, strength, power, speed? And there are different protocols depending on what you want to optimize. And it's similar, I think, with breath work. That is, there are simple introductions to breath work, the equivalent of walking around the block, that may be all you ever want to do. And then there are various different kinds of breath work that may be finely tuned to what you're trying to optimize or to your just general comfort level of doing it. So what's the simple introduction? I think there are three things I would say. One is simply slow your breathing down to 6 per minute. Navy SEALs do this. So you can get an app. You inhale, exhale. And each cycle is 10 seconds. So 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale. Do that for 5 minutes. It shouldn't be hard to do. If you have health problems and you're uncomfortable, don't do it. But for most people who are otherwise healthy, it's relatively straightforward.
So do that for a minute, or do that
5 minutes.
So 5 minutes, 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale. That's a great place to start. So if you do nothing else from this podcast, try that for 5 minutes. See how you feel. Okay, great.
Now, I would say that some people advocate just take 3 or 4 breaths like that, and they may have an effect. But I think based on the published analysis, I would say try for 5 minutes. Like, we all could use taking 5 minutes out of the day anyway, just to chill a little bit, regardless. The second one that I like is box breathing. Box breathing is very much in that metaphor of box. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And typically it's 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. I go 5, 5, 5, 5. I just feel comfortable with that. But 4, 4, 4, 4 is fine. Then you're slowing your breathing down from a little less than 4 per minute. So you inhale. And just repeat that. Once again, you get an app for that.
So inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Try that for 5 minutes.
Correct. And just repeat that every day. Then there's 4-7-8, which is another variant. Some people may find this a little more challenging. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, slowly exhale for 8. And I like doing that for variety. My time of day for doing this is when I'm waking up, just lying in bed, doing it for 5 minutes. But another sweet spot for doing it is after lunch. So those of us who eat lunch often have a postprandial depression. That is, we start feeling a little bit tired. I find what I used to do is I used to go out for a cup of coffee, get that caffeine boost. Now, when I start feeling sluggish, I do 5 minutes of breath work, and I feel rejuvenated.
And for those of you at home, postprandial means after a meal. So it's a fancy word for post meal. If you read research on diet, you'll see a lot of postprandial stuff. And so I have a question about 4-7-8 breathing. I like to do that when I first wake up. I find I'm just less stressed during the day if I start my day with just 2 or 4 of those. I'll do that 4 times, 4-7-8. And so inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. I also do that before I go to sleep. So I'd love to talk with you about breathwork for sleep. And Dr. Andrew Weil has been an advocate of this. Did he have something to do with the 4-7-8 breathwork?
As far as I know, I don't know if he's the one who developed the protocol or adopted the protocol, but he's the one who's usually associated with that 4-7-8 protocol.
Okay. So that one I find deeply relaxing. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And I just do that a couple times. And goodness gracious, that really is very calming.
So, but you bring up a point. You can try this broad spectrum of easy breathing exercises and find one that resonates with you, that's easy to do. And I would say that one of these three, for most people, are fairly easy. They're documented to have positive effects. And if you don't have a positive effect, don't feel bad. Don't rush to your doctor. There's certain idiosyncrasies here. But for the general population, it's beneficial. And this is across, I don't know what it is in before teenage years, but for teenagers on up, the data is pretty solid.
And so this is a great thing. This is a great thing to do multiple times during the day. First thing in the morning, just you don't need to do a full 5 minutes, but just some of these breathing exercises, breath work, really great. After lunch, I hadn't thought about that. I usually have sometimes a little bit of stress in the afternoon, or that dip in energy post meal. And then before bed is another great time that you can practice this, or anytime you're feeling stressed. It's a free way to use your body's biology to calm down.
And with respect to sleep, if in the afternoon you feel like you need that cup of coffee because you are feeling a little bit sleepy, that cup of coffee in the afternoon can interfere with your sleep. But if you instead substitute breath work, you're not taking in that caffeine. What you may find is that there'll be some improvement in your sleep quality.
Can we talk about breath work specifically for sleep? Sleep is so sleep is so essential for a healthy brain. It's essential for memory, mood, repair. If you don't sleep, those who have chronically sleep deprived or don't sleep enough have an increased risk of all-cause mortality. And so what are some ways people can use breath work to either fall asleep faster and fall back to sleep when they wake up in the middle of the night?
Well, you just said it. And here again, it may vary amongst individuals, and you may not need to do 5 minutes. I think the point you made about taking a few 4-7-8s can do the trick. And here again, I would encourage people when they're lying in bed, about to go to sleep, do a little bit of breath work. And if they wake up in the middle of the night, then have to go to the bathroom and get back into bed. Once they settle back into bed, do it again. And, it may not work the first time, but here again, try it. I encourage people to try things and don't give up when it doesn't work the first time. Give it a little bit of effort. And then after a while, you feel it doesn't work. That's okay. No one's being judgmental here.
How long should people try it for? Should they give it at least a week?
I would say a month.
Okay.
But, if a month is out of the question, give it a week. Do something. Where I would encourage people to do something. And if you don't stick with it, you may not see the benefit that you may have after a month, but at least you gave it a shot. And I think that there are a lot of people who are just not doing it because they don't think it'll be effective. They think it's too woo-woo. They think it's not for them. And all those things may be true. But if they do this self-experiment, they may find out that they get benefit.
And there's so much science behind this. And one thing that's really clear is how important oxygen is for our brain, how important breathing is for our brain. What would you say is the number one thing that damages our lungs and that impairs our ability to use our lungs effectively to bring oxygen to our brain?
Smoking. That's just going to kill your lungs. It's a delicate tissue. It's very robust, but it's delicate. When you put these foreign particles in there, particularly over time, it's going to be bad. There's going to be acute effects and there's going to be long-term effects.
When I was in middle school, I think I learned, I don't know if this is true, that that smoking, specifically the tar, would actually pop the alveoli, that it would actually destroy the alveoli, those tiny air sacs. Is that one of the impacts of smoking cigarettes?
It very well may be, but it's outside my area of expertise,
Okay.
so I'll plead ignorance.
And,
All I
and
would say is don't smoke. That's the solution. Don't smoke. You don't need to know the damage that smoking does. It's very well documented that it does a lot of damage and there's no escaping it. And it's not just tobacco, it's other things. I'm not judgmental about people smoking marijuana, but if you're going to want to be intoxicated by cannabis, you might consider alternative methods of administration, particularly ingesting it.
And when I was younger and I was in college and graduate school, I was a major advocate for the legalization of cannabis, and I still think that's the right thing. I'm a libertarian. I think generally government should allow us to do whatever we want to do as long as we're not hurting other people, including putting substances into your body or not. Now the new data is showing that regular cannabis smoking can be harmful to our memory. It can hurt not only just memory, it can hurt other parts of cognition, processing speed, attention, focus, motivation, all these things. And is it worse than alcohol? I don't think so. I think it's safer than alcohol, but it's not risk free. I used to think, oh, cannabis is not addictive and it's not harmful. It turns out it may be harmful to a lot of people regarding their brain, and smoking certainly can have negative impact on the lungs as well. Whatever you're smoking, and I've heard, and cloves I've heard are even worse than cigarettes. People who smoke cloves. Now, thoughts on vaping? Vaping's been a bit controversial.
I'd stay away from it. I mean, the lung is very precious tissue, and you want to treat it with respect. And introducing anything other than pure, unadulterated air into your lungs has potential to do damage in the short term and the long term. I mean, here in California, we have concerns about smoke because there's a fire and you get smoke in the air. And what you need to do is immediately put on one of these high filtration masks to make sure you're not inhaling that particulate matter. If you happen to live in an area that is known to have pollutants, either particulate pollutants or just volatiles, you need to be aware of it. You may want to get a filter for inside your home, and you may want to engage in political effort to do what you can to stop the pollution.
I'm so glad you mentioned political effort. It's very hard to convince the federal government to do anything. Work start local and then state. You can go to your local city council and get on the docket to speak, and you can also go to your local government, the state capital, and you can meet with members who are from your district and say, listen, I live here, I vote, and I care about this. I would like you to do something, and here's some science. So the federal government is daunting unless you got $1 million to hire a lobbyist to go meet with your representative. Get involved locally, countywide. You can go to county commissioner meetings. They affect things like water, and you can talk to them about what strategies are you doing to lower pollution in our area. It's a really, really important deal. So for those who are in a high pollution area, do you recommend like an N95 mask? Is that the particular?
Yeah, yeah.
So and then HEPA filters are HEPA filters for the home or office, these sorts of things.
I mean, these things start to get expensive, and you want fresh air in the house. You open the windows. I mean, it's hard to do. I mean, we don't want to live in a bubble, but these things have negative effects, and unfortunately, many of the worst sources of pollution are in areas where individuals have less political power. And, those who have a lot of political power make sure they're not in their neighborhoods. And those with little political power don't know how to exercise it to make sure they're not in their area. And it's tough. I mean, I wish I had a solution for it.
It's very hard. I watched the documentary about veganism. I'm not vegan, but I'd like to take in information from all different perspectives. And this shared pig farms in North Carolina. North Carolina is the #1 source of pork for the United States. Most of these pig farms are in poor black neighborhoods. Almost all the neighbors who talked about the impact of the pig farm, they were poor black people who didn't have the ability to move and leave the neighborhood. And these unfortunate people are exposed to incredible types of pollution in the air and water from these farms. It was horrible to their quality of life. And so since then, I've said I'm not going to eat pork from North Carolina because I don't want to support that industry. And so if I go to a restaurant, I love barbecue, by the way. If I go to a barbecue restaurant, I say, hey, where's your pork from? They say, I don't know. I said, I can't buy it because I don't want, I like the phrase, vote with your dollars. If you don't like something, stop giving money to it. And so I want to make sure that I'm not giving any money to low quality farms that are hurting the environment and hurting those people. And air, goodness gracious, poor people are much more likely to live near a highway and to live in places with low quality air or live near manufacturing or industry that pollutes the air. And that's just not fair. And it also hurts children. And I think it's really important that people advocate for the health of children of whatever income status and whatever race, because these children in these poor areas have lower air quality, and that can hurt their brain, and that can have all kinds of negative impacts. So please get involved if this is something that you care about, and start with someone, your city council or county affairs, and get involved. These are really important issues. So if you'd like more from Professor Jack Feldman, you can search him on YouTube. He's got published videos there. He's done a bunch of great interviews there, talking about the science and the benefits of breathing and of breath work. One of the leading scientists in his field. And Dr. Feldman, it's been an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
It's my privilege. Thanks very much. And I look forward to seeing this out in the wild.